Silencers and or suppressors. That means if you want to buy a silencer or suppressor and do it legally.
How much louder is it without the silencer?
It's about 6 times louder without the silencer.
We were reminded how dangerous silencers can be a few weeks ago.
The reason we have mufflers on our vehicles is because they're incredibly loud. That output is incredibly loud. The muffler helps dampen that noise. The suppressors.
Arizona Senate has passed a bill to make it easier to own a gun silencer, more accurately called a suppressor.
The one who's a dealer would have to do background checks. So the background check is part of the burden that is placed on ordinary Americans.
Is the National Firearms Act, and in particular, suppressors.
Okay, you've got William Kirk, the head honcho over at Washington Gun Law TV, diving deep into the murky waters of old laws, specifically giving the National Firearms Act a good shake to see if it still holds up against the mighty sword of constitutionality. So what's the deal? Well, Kirk's not just twiddling his thumbs here. He's raising some serious questions about whether laws like the NFA, which have been hanging around like an old lampshade for decades, are actually playing by the rules of the Constitution.
Silencers and or suppressors. That means if you want to buy a silencer or suppressor and do it legally, the ownership of silencers or suppressors, Washington State being one of them, so long as suppressors were added to it through the Gun Owners' Rights Act of 1986 when President Reagan was in office. Suppressors from the IRS Code, Section 5845, which authorizes the Internal Revenue Service. You're going to go through a background check, and if you check out, you now get your silencer or suppressor.
Think about it. The NFA was slapped into existence back in the 1930s, a time when Al Capone was king of the underworld and Tommy guns were as common as dirt. But times change, right? Kirk's asking if laws designed to tackle those mobster days still make sense in today's world. He's got a point. I mean, the Constitution isn't some dusty old relic. It's the beating heart of our legal system, and it's supposed to keep our laws in check. So when Kirk starts poking around, questioning whether the NFA is still towing the line, it's like a wake-up call for everyone to dust off their law books and take a good hard look. And let's be real here, Kirk's not just doing this for kicks. He's shining a light on something pretty darn important. If we're going to live in a country where laws are fair and just, they've got to pass muster against the Constitution. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So next time you hear William Kirk dropping truths about old laws and constitutional concerns, remember, it's not just about shaking things up for the sake of it. It's about making sure our legal system stays true to its roots and keeps on serving the people it's meant to protect. Texas law challenges regulation. Buckle up, folks, because things are getting spicy down in Texas. The Lone Star State decides it's had enough of Uncle Sam poking around in its business, especially when it comes to firearms. So what do? They pass a law that basically tells the feds, hands off our suppressors. Yep, Texas decides to shake things up by passing a law that says if you make or use a suppressor within the state, you're off the federal hook. No more jumping through hoops or filling out endless forms just to muffle the sound of your shots. Sounds pretty sweet, huh?
We can't pick and choose, and we have to follow the laws, but people don't understand.
Our neighbors to the east and west allow silencers.
How much louder is it without the silencer?
It's about 6 times louder without the silencer.
We were reminded how dangerous silencers can be a few weeks ago.
That as the sheriff, we're the keeper of the jails. We do have a say who can come in and out of our jails.
But hold your horses, because Uncle Sam isn't too happy about this Texas-sized rebellion. The feds take one look at Texas waving its "Don't Tread on Me" flag, and they say, oh no you don't. Next thing you know, we've got ourselves a full-blown showdown between Texas and the federal government. And let us tell you, it's a showdown for the ages. Texas isn't backing down, standing tall with its law in one hand and a firm grip on its cowboy hat in the other. Meanwhile, the feds are digging in their heels, ready to throw down some legal firepower to keep Texas in check. It's like a Wild West standoff, but instead of 6-shooters, they're slinging legal briefs and arguments about states' rights faster than you can say, yee-haw. So what's going to happen next? Well, that's anyone's guess. But one thing's for sure, when Texas decides to take a stand, you better believe they're going to ride that bull till the bitter end. So grab your popcorn, because this legal showdown ain't over till the Lone Star State sings.
Makers of the silencers are the ones pushing state lawmakers to lift the ban, and they have found at least one supporter.
The reason we have mufflers on our vehicles is because they're incredibly loud. That output is incredibly loud. The muffler helps dampen that noise. The suppressors.
Arizona Senate has passed a bill to make it easier to own a gun silencer, more accurately called a suppressor.
State lawmakers are considering several changes to gun laws, including making these much easier to get.
Paxton versus DeBach. All right, let's dive into the legal ring and see what's going on with Paxton versus DeBach. This ain't your average courtroom drama. It's a Texas-sized legal showdown that's got everyone on the edge of their seats. We've got Paxton, representing the great state of Texas, going toe-to-toe with DeBach, backed by the federal government. It's like a heavyweight bout with legal punches flying left and right. Now here's the kicker. Paxton isn't just fighting for the fun of it. He's got a bone to pick with DeBach over Texas's law on suppressors. But things hit a snag when the trial court steps in and says, "Hold your horses, folks. You ain't got enough skin in the game."
General Ken Paxton announced a new lawsuit against the Biden administration today, taking aim at new gun sale rules.
We will not let Biden continue his tyrannical abuse of power. Completely disrespected and disregarded the democratic process.
And background checks, just like commercial dealers. And as our Ryan Chandler reports, Ken Paxton says that is unconstitutional.
The one who's a dealer would have to do background checks. So the background check is part of the burden that is placed on ordinary Americans.
Throughout the years, Congress deliberately recognized the legality of private firearm sales by non-dealers.
The court slams the brakes on the whole shebang, tossing the case out on the grounds of lack of standing. Translation? The plaintiffs, aka Texas and Company, didn't show enough proof that they'd been hurt by DeBach's actions. But don't count Paxton out just yet. He's not one to back down from a fight. He's dusting himself off, rallying his legal team, and heading straight for the Fifth Circuit with a fiery appeal in hand. This isn't just any old appeal. This is Paxton we're talking about. The guy's got more fight in him than a Texas Longhorn at a rodeo. He's ready to show the Fifth Circuit that Texas means business and that DeBach isn't going to get off easy. So what's going to happen next? Well, that's the million-dollar question. But one thing's for sure. When Paxton steps into that courtroom, you better believe he's going to give it everything he's got. So grab your popcorn and hold on to your hats, because this legal battle is far from over. Public perception shift. Let's talk about the real meat and potatoes of this legal showdown, the constitutional arguments and the shifting tides of public perception. First up, we've got the big guns, constitutional arguments. Lawyers are duking it out in the courtroom, slinging phrases like Second Amendment rights and constitutional violations faster than you can say objection. At the heart of it all is the question of whether Texas's law on suppressors steps on Uncle Sam's toes a little too hard. It's like a legal game of chess, with each side trying to outmaneuver the other to prove their point. But here's the twist. While the lawyers are busy wrangling over constitutional technicalities, something interesting is happening out in the real world. Public perception is shifting faster than a tumbleweed in a Texas twister. See, back in the day, suppressors were seen as the tools of the trade for shady characters and gangsters. But oh, how the times have changed. Nowadays, folks are starting to see suppressors in a whole new light. They're not just for sneaky assassins anymore. They're actually pretty darn useful for sportsmen and hunters.
Still has to vote on the bill. 9 on your side's Craig Smith looked into how much difference a suppressor makes in the sound of a gun.
Less dangerous in the sense that it is less likely to cause damage to our hearing. That you notice that they will not silence anything. Will they significantly reduce the noise? Absolutely.
Some people call these a silencer, but how much silence are we really talking about?
Want to get a suppressor, but we haven't been able to do so because of this law, and the court found that that was no injury in fact.
You're out on the range, popping off rounds like there's no tomorrow. But instead of deafening blasts, all you hear is a gentle pew pew, thanks to your trusty suppressor. It's like magic. And let's not forget about safety. See, suppressors aren't just about keeping things quiet. They're also about protecting your precious hearing. With more and more folks realizing the benefits of suppressors, it's no wonder public opinion is starting to shift. So what's the bottom line? Well, while the lawyers duke it out in the courtroom, the rest of us are busy rethinking what we know about suppressors. Who knows? Maybe one day soon, we'll all be hitting the range with our trusty suppressors in tow, enjoying a little peace and quiet. in this crazy world of ours. Erosion of the NFA. All right, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, the potential impact of this legal showdown on the National Firearms Act. We're about to dive into some serious speculation territory. Now here's the deal. This lawsuit isn't just about Texas and its beef with Uncle Sam. It's part of a bigger movement, one that's got folks all across the country questioning the validity of the NFA and its whole regulatory shebang. Think about it. For decades, the NFA has been the big kahuna of firearm regulations, dictating who can have what and when. But now with Texas throwing a wrench in the works, people are starting to wonder if maybe it's time for a change. And that's where things get interesting.
Is the National Firearms Act, and in particular suppressors, here in the state of Texas, and you leave it here in the state of Texas, well, then the NFA doesn't apply to that. And away we go, we have ourselves a lawsuit. But I got to be honest with you, had an opportunity to read the state of Texas brief. Despite the fact that the state of Texas exercises its own sovereignty, its state legislature passed this law, and firearms with attached stabilizing braces, the use of suppressors have become far, far more commonplace.
See, if this lawsuit goes Texas's way, and let's be real, stranger things have happened, then we could be looking at the beginning of the end for the NFA as we know it. The whole thing could come crashing down like a house of cards, leaving firearm regulations nationwide in a state of flux. But hold your horses, because we're not done yet. Even if this lawsuit doesn't end with a knockout blow to the NFA, it's still sending shockwaves through the legal world. People are waking up to the idea that maybe it's time to rethink how we regulate firearms in this country. So what's the bottom line? Well, whether you're a die-hard defender of the Second Amendment or a card-carrying member of the Gun Control Brigade, one thing is for sure. The outcome of this lawsuit could have far-reaching implications for firearm regulations nationwide. So buckle up, because we're in for a wild ride. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.